Hi everyone and Happy New Year. We start the year off of the Tiger off with another episode of Ask Bác Mark, and we look forward to bringing you more interesting and useful content this year. And I personally hope that all of you in the audience here today have enjoyed Tet holiday. I personally enjoyed it a lot. It's just a second year that I could spend Tet holiday with my family after quite a while, being away from home, studying abroad in the USA. Yes, and so in the previous two episodes of Ask Bác Mark Podcast, we discussed Ikigai, which is finding your sense of purpose. And in the second episode, we talked about introversion and extroversion and why it matters. And we were so glad to receive amazing support as well as participation from all of you. And today we are going to continue with the third episode in our first season about knowing ourselves. And in this episode, let's explore another very intriguing concept, intuition. And of course, here with us to share about this topic is Bac Mark. Hi Bac Mark, and Happy New Year to you. How did you spend your Tet holiday, Bac?
Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. I'm very pleased to be back. Well, unlike most expats, I stay in Vietnam during Tet. It's something I very much enjoy and look forward to. This year, it was a time of relaxation and reflection. I didn't get out as much as usual for the simple reason that my stepfather died last year. So more time was spent at home.
Yes, and I think this year's Tet is a little bit colder than usual too. So I myself also didn't go out quite a lot.
That's another factor. It was freezing, and I'm somebody who grew up in a cold climate in Delaware, and spent many years living in upstate New York, where it's even colder with snow and wind.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 4 years in the US. However, still, when I got back to Vietnam, the coldness in Vietnam, it's just something different. Especially in Hanoi, I think, I still feel like it's freezing. So exactly. I also didn't go out a lot this year. Yes, and please give your warmest welcome to Bac Mark and welcome him back to our this episode by dropping some hearts and some like to show your support for Bac Mark. Yes. And for those of you that are new to the channel, Bac Mark, or Dr. Mark Ashwell, is the managing director and the co-founder of Capstone Vietnam, which is a leading educational consulting company in Vietnam. And before he co-founded Capstone in 2009, Bac Mark was the country director of the Institute of International Education in Vietnam. And in this podcast series, Bac Mark will share with us his knowledge and his experience and on multiple topics that are interesting to young people especially. And this podcast series will be on Fridays at 3 p.m. And please follow the Ask Bác Mark and Bac Mark accounts on mic so that you don't miss out on any episodes. And now, with no further ado, Bac Mark, what is intuition? And can you give us an example of someone who has good intuition?
Okay, so two questions. Let me start with the first question. I'll answer the second one later. So intuition, let me use a Cambridge Dictionary definition. It's defined as an ability to understand or know something immediately based on your feelings rather than facts. You can think of it as a gut feeling, a hunch, a sixth sense. It's really an ability to connect the dots and make logical leaps without having all the facts at hand. So it's like an inner voice talking to you, guiding you in a particular direction. And there are times when you ignore it at your peril. So I think it's something very important, and it ties in very nicely with the theme of this first season. And the previous two episodes were a good segue to intuition. Everyone has intuition. Many of us are not aware of it, but it is a a powerful tool in our toolbox of life skills.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree. I think still a lot of people don't recognize how important intuition is. And, I personally feel like I also heavily rely on my intuition as well because, I think that it's very rare that in our daily lives that we have, a perfect set of facts or things that we can consider. And usually we have to make decisions when we don't actually have all of the information needed. So I also believe that we rely on our intuition heavily. And yes.
So if I could add something to that, it's certainly neglected and overlooked in this rational world. People tend to focus on rationality, facts, information. We use all of that to make decisions. But there's much more to it than that. I wanted to quote Steve Jobs. He referred to intuition as more powerful than intellect. And he commented on its impact on his work. Steve Jobs and many, many others, Albert Einstein, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Because you mentioned that, can you actually compare intuition to intellect? And maybe perhaps, could you elaborate a little bit more and define intellect with comparison to intuition?
Well, we all have one intelligence, which can be measured by various tests. So what is intelligence? It's quite different from intuition. It's the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. That's the simple definition. Mm-hmm. And to add on to that, you have multiple intelligences, which made perfect sense to me when I learned about this a long time ago. There's a guy by the name of Professor Howard Gardner at Harvard, and he came up with this theory of multiple intelligences, the idea that we have more than one intelligence. Linguistic, some people are linguistically gifted. Uh-huh. Mathematical, musical, some people are prodigies. Bodily kinesthetic, sports, and there are others. So that's the key difference. Intuition is a gut feeling, it's an inner voice. You actually use them in combination. So the more knowledge and experience you have, I think the better your intuition will work for you. But it's something that transcends intelligence.
Right. And so what might be the advantages of having good intuition, Bác?
It helps you make smart decisions, large and small. It helps you to avoid making mistakes in life, also large and small. And it gives you the confidence that your decisions are the right ones more often than not. And like I said, when I've ignored, it's not like intuition is always right, but in most cases it is based on my experience. And when I've ignored it, so I look ahead. There's a fork in the road. Should I turn left or right? So left is intuition, and right is not. It's based on somebody else's advice or recommendation. And when I've headed in that direction, I've often regretted it. So, like I said, it is a powerful tool that you can use in your life.
Right. I totally agree, especially in the parts that you said intuition gives you the confidence. Because to me, I feel like in every decision, it's actually a trade-off. So even if you have all the information necessary to make the decision, if you choose A, then definitely you are missing out on B. So there's always some kind of like an opportunity cost. And so intuition would help me personally to, stick with my decision and not to regret, not doing otherwise.
So if I may turn the tables and act as the moderator, may I ask you a question about intuition?
Sure, Bác. Yes.
So can you give us an example of time that you've listened to that inner voice, that you followed your intuition, and how it worked out?
Yeah, I'll have to let me recall my memory a little bit. Yes.
All right.
I think there are a lot of, just small decisions on a daily basis. But if I'd have to come up with an example, I would say the decision to take a job. So I was offered a position. So two companies offered me a position, and one is a larger company. Another one is a little bit smaller. The position is quite similar, but so basically, factually, the position offered by the larger company would make more sense. However, my gut feeling told me otherwise. My gut feeling just told me that it might be more interesting. It might, it would let me to be myself more, to take the position in the, less scale of the company in the other one. And so I chose the smaller company, and, I didn't regret that at all. And actually it turned out I learned a lot, and the environment in that company is just amazing, and I would never regret, not choosing the larger one.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. What about you, Bac, if you don't mind?
Okay, well, one example is the decision to move from the nonprofit to the private sector and found Capstone Vietnam back in 2009.
Right.
So yes, I had knowledge, I had experience, I had some insights, but I also had intuition, the feeling that it would work out. And that gave me confidence in making that decision.
Right. Yes. And so why do you think intuition is the highest form of intelligence, if you do think so?
Well, I also wanted to share just one more example. So I mentioned Capstone. Another one is this guy, he's an expat in Vietnam from the US. And I won't go into too much detail, but he had a small IT company. I had a project idea that I shared with him. This is a very friendly person. And he looked at me and said, that sounds great. He immediately expressed interest. But after the meeting, my intuition told me, this inner voice told me to walk away, which is exactly what I did. Now, years later, it turned out that he had embezzled and stole 6 figures from a nonprofit with which he was associated, and lots of money from friends. He was turned out to be a sociopath. I mean, somebody who's able to lie and then cheat people for his own personal benefit. So that worked out well. That's a really good example.
Yeah, your intuition saved you there. But was there anything in particular that make you feel like that at that moment?
So in addition to the feeling, I guess it was this question in my mind whether I could trust him, which is related to intuition. I mean, it comes in handy with interpersonal relationships. For those of you who think of yourselves as a good judge of character, this is actually part of it. Do you want to get involved with this person, either personally or professionally, or do you want to walk away? It may be a question of ability and capacity on his part.
Yeah, I think intuition comes in especially handy when it comes to people. Like usually, you never have enough facts and stories and reference about people that you are dealing with. So I think for me, I always need to rely on my intuition to, kind of like figure out if I should connect and establish a closer relationship with this person or not.
I kind of think of it as having a guardian angel, sitting on your shoulder, helping to guide you in life. They say it's not magic, which it's not, but it is magical in a sense.
That's a good analogy, Bac. Yes. So going back to my previous question. Why do you think intuition is the highest form of intelligence?
I think it's just an important tool that supplements intelligence
Mm-hmm.
and knowledge and experience. I'm not convinced that it's the highest form. I've heard that from different sources.
Yeah.
Like I said, we all have intuition. In some of us, it's better developed than in others. But it is something that you can develop. I don't think it's something that most people are aware of, that they think about. But it is something that can be developed.
Yeah, and yes, that takes me to, because you mentioned that it can be developed, so that takes me to my next question. Can somebody actually practice to have better intuition in a way? And if so, how do you think they can do that?
So, yeah, that's a very good question. I think some of you have heard of Jack Canfield. He's the creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which
right.
has been translated into many languages. Okay. He called intuition a mental muscle that you can strengthen and use to create success and become the best possible version of yourself, end of quote. And you can also do that with your memory and your intellect. He refers to your subconscious mind, which is part of your intuition, where your intuition resides, you could say, as the source of your hidden genius. It will always provide you, I'll say it will usually provide you with the right knowledge to move forward in the right direction, something we talked about earlier.
Right. And so does he have any suggestions in particular for us, and or do you have any particular suggestions for us and for the audience on how we might be able to develop our intuition?
Well, I'll mention 7 from him and then a recommendation of my own. So recognize when your intuition speaks and think of it as a voice that you should listen to. Deepen your intuition through meditation. That's something I have not done, but it does not surprise me. Dedicate time each and every day to listen to your intuition. And they say that, so we talked about introverts and extroverts in the last session, and they say that introverts tend to be more intuitive. That's because they spend more time living in their mind, in their heads, and they tend to be deep thinkers. That could be one reason. Also, let's see, I'll just mention another one. You take immediate action based on your intuition, and you trust yourself, you trust your intuition. Another one is to actually keep a journal of those moments. And that's something I haven't done. I just have, these recollections, these memories. But write it down and then check and see if you're right about something, about the decision you made, about a person, and kind of track that. I think that could be useful as well.
Right. That's interesting. So perhaps, for example, you could have written down what your intuition told you with that incident about the IT guy, right? And then later on, we could, actually go back and look at what you wrote there, and it would be very interesting, I'd say.
Absolutely, and that's something that, when you ask the question, something that popped into my mind. And sometimes intuition, I view it as a gift, and sometimes it's something that other people recognize in you, but that you don't consciously recognize in yourself. I was having lunch with a friend, someone I respect, have known for a while, and we were having this conversation, and I was kind of filling in the gaps in the conversation, and jumping ahead, making those logical leaps that I talked about. And he said, "You have good intuition." And I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, kind of like making educated guesses without having all the facts at your disposal. So I thought that was cool.
Yes. And just a pop-up question, because I see that a lot of our members of the audience are younger people who might be interested in, taking a different path in their career. So a lot of us are still struggling to find our ways or to make sure we are sticking to the right direction in our career. So how do you think intuition can help you with that, with the career choices?
I think it's just one of many tools. When we talked about introversion, extroversion, and ikigai for that matter, finding your ikigai, finding your sense of purpose, there are various ways that you can consciously, begin to do that. There are career assessments that you can take. A lot of the ones online they're not scientific, meaning they're not very reliable. There are also online quizzes or surveys for intuition, and many of them are not to be taken seriously because this is a fairly new area of research.
Right. And I actually do have a point to comment, but I think that even though, yes, we do need to, value intuition, it doesn't mean that we, take anything away from, the fact that we would need to collect more information and to have, kind of more rational and logical process when making decision. So it's a mix of both, I think. That
that's right. It's not just, this is my gut feeling, let's do it.
Yeah.
There are other factors at play, like I mentioned, knowledge and experience. And hopefully, the older you are, the more knowledge you have, if you're a lifelong learner, and certainly the more experience you have. But that's it's just one of a number of tools in your life skills toolbox, but it's not the only one.
Yes, right. Oh, and actually I see a hand from a member of the audience here, so...
Okay.
Hello, did you have something to share with us?
Hello, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, hello?
Okay, so I really like this topic, and I actually comes up with a few questions I want to ask about the intuition. So
Great.
The definitions of intuition heard from your speech is that the ability to understand something beyond your feelings and rather than the logical facts. So is that the case that it can consider like a cognitive bias or the conformity bias that you have in your subconsciousness, and that can lead to like some sort of bias that you had before rather than like intuition? And the second question is that like, is there any moment that you just your intuitions, but it turns out like a poor decisions and you have to reset your mindset again to make sure that your intuition is wrong? And the third question is that like, I know there's something called delusional intuitions. So is this something called like an illusions in the context that intuitive rather than experience of false intuitions, and the person kind of experience something that resembles to the intuitive, but instead the experience it qualifies as delirious. So what do you think about that?
Right, great questions. Actually, there are three questions, right? So we are going to take shots with them one by one. And so the first question, to summarize, I believe, is about how to stay away from being biased when making decisions, relying on your intuition. Am I right?
Yeah, because the definitions of that is you just your feelings, but the cognitive bias is also something that you just your feeling and just on some the experience that you had before. So this two kind of definitions kind of resemble. So I want to make sure like what's the difference, how we can differentiate between our intuition with the cognitive bias when we make the decision.
Right. Yes, Bac Mark?
So let me offer another definition from a Psychology Today article. It called intuition a form of knowledge that appears in consciousness without obvious deliberation. It is not magical, but rather a faculty in which hunches, so listen carefully to this, hunches are generated by the unconscious mind rapidly sifting through past experience and cumulative knowledge. I think that's key. So the intuition is not taking something out of the blue. It's not like a wild guess. And you're not relying solely on this gut feeling. Should I do this or not? Should I enter into a relationship with this person or not? You're also, your mind's also working with past experience and cumulative knowledge. I think the way in which this happens, like I said, not much research has been done, but the way in which this happens is fascinating. And some people are obviously better at it than others, have, more finely honed intuition, stronger intuition than others. So I hope that provides at least a partial answer to a good question. Qiao, do you have anything to add?
Yes. So regarding bias, I do believe that, when it comes to kind of like the more general bias, such as, bias against someone or against a set of people, or like, for example, against women or against black people or something like that, then that's something definitely we should avoid. However, I do think that when we make decisions, we always are kind of a little bit biased because we, as I said before, we never actually have all of the information needed, and our brain would not be able to function with that amount of information in all of our, daily choices that we make. So I think that we would always need to rely on our past experiences, and so because of that, people might argue that we are a little bit biased in our decisions.
So our past experiences, also including our past failures and mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But when you make a decision, you're weighing different factors, and it's intuition which could push you in a specific direction, and you have this good feeling that it's the right direction, you've made the right decision, and then wait and find out and see if that in fact is true. But if your intuition is well developed, I think in most cases it is true, but it's certainly something that needs to be documented more.
Right. And about your second question, well, I personally have, multiple decisions affected by my intuition, and not all of them, are the right one. And as you said, sometimes intuition would lead you to the, poor decision. However, for me personally, I would not regret choosing to listen to my intuition, because it's gut feeling, so it feels better when you kind of like listen to it, and if it's turned out to be a poor decision, then you take that as a lesson and move on. That's just my own way of looking at that.
I think I would have to think long and hard about instances in which I made the wrong decision because of my intuition. I think there are more cases where I made the wrong decision because I didn't follow my intuition, that inner voice. But it's something I would have to think about.
Right. And might I actually ask you that question also? Like, have you ever experienced a wrong decision made by following your intuition?
Yeah.
If you don't mind sharing with the audience.
So actually, I do have like one poor decision when I base on my intuitions, is that at the time that I think that not when I apply for a job or a challenge, we do have to pass like few rounds of tests. Because of that time, I think that I'm not really good enough to join like the processing of the 4 rounds of interviews. So I was kind of like in my subconsciousness, there's a inner voice saying that, okay, maybe you are not ready yet, and you can come back later or something like that. And so I decide not to go on those kind of interviews, and I take more time. But now I think back, maybe I can gain some experience, and also maybe that turns out like a poor decision because this is just like the inner voice talking to me, but I don't acknowledge that it actually is not the reality. Or maybe I can do something about that. Like I can go further than what I'm thinking. So
Right.
So I was so scared of that, and I actually trust intuitions that time. And now think back again, I'm kind of regret.
Yeah, but that takes us to what Bac Mark suggested also. Like we can take down notes on when our intuition have helped us and when it has kind of led us to a bad decision. And also we can spend more time listening to our intuition, and we can also still find more information when we make decisions. And then that's a way we can develop and better our intuition, because as Bac Mark gave an example, it's kind of like a muscle, so we can train it as well.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. Like one key my takeaway from Bac Mark advice that like we should document it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, great. Thank you for sharing. There was a third question, right? I forgot. Yeah, can you repeat that?
Okay, so I know there's a term called delusional intuitions. So it's sort of like in like illusions in the context of the intuitive rather than unexperienced or false intuition. So the person actually experienced something that resembled to intuitive, but instead that the actually like experience is qualified in deluders. So what do you think about that, like delusional intuitions?
I think that intuition is not foolproof. It's not perfect. So you can make mistakes. I think it depends what you're dealing with and how much previous knowledge, related knowledge and experience you have. That's just one thought.
Yes. Well, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with that term, and it would take quite a while, because this is like a kind of like a session with regards to psychology as well, and maybe even neuroscience as well. So it would take a few episodes to kind of discuss this, but it's been very interesting. And yeah, I think we would all need to and we all should look into this more, and it could be a potential topic for a whole another episode of Ask Bác Mark.
Thank you for your questions. Excellent.
Yes. Do you have any other things you want to share with the audience, or anybody else from the audience would like to share something with us?
Okay, I'm gonna move to the audience to leave room for other people gonna have more quick questions, and I really appreciate your answer. That's really, I opened my mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your questions were great. Oh, I see another hand, so I'll invite Potatoes165 to the stage. Hello?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello, Bac Mark. Again, another very interesting topic. And I do have a question for you. Do you think that if you, make it like, I would like to make it like break it more simple for me, that I think intuition is more like following your heart, right? And intellect is like following your mind. So if I would make it simple, I would like phrase it that way. And do you think that following your heart will decrease, the risk of regret, and you will have a more like satisfied life? And,
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I do. Let me quote. This is a paraphrase from Albert Einstein. So it's not one, quote out of his mouth, but several different thoughts that he shared. And it's exactly what you're talking about. He said that the intuitive mind, the following a hunch, your heart, the sixth sense, whatever you want to call it, he referred to that as a sacred gift. And the rational mind, so your intellect, intelligence, facts, information, knowledge, is a faithful servant. And what he said was that we have created a society that honors the servant, the rational mind, and has forgotten the gift, the intuitive mind. And you could just think of the role that intuition plays in creating, whether it's in physics or in painting or whatever. It plays a huge role. So I think that's a perfect paraphrase and relevant to your point.
Right, and if I might add to that, from my own experience, I would say that, yeah, I would try to follow my heart more. However, as I mentioned before, while following my heart, I would kind of like, use my mind to collect more thoughts, to collect more informations and more knowledge, so that I don't kind of like go into the bush while listening to my heart. So similarly to what Bac Mark said there, kind of like use your mind to be the servant for your heart, I would say.
You're using both. I mean, to go back to that personal example. So that guy, that was a gut feeling I had. Don't work with him. But I also questioned his capacity. Did he have the expertise? Did he have the capacity, the team that could make my idea a reality? And I didn't think he did. So it was actually a combination of factors. It wasn't just my heart telling me, don't work with him. There was more to it. So one reinforced the other.
Right.
And it led to a decision that I was happy with. So I was pleased. And I knew it was the right decision, and it turned out to be the right decision in retrospect.
Yes. Right. I hope that that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. So
you.
so I will move to the audience. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, we appreciate your interaction a lot, and if anybody else from the audience has anything to share, please feel free to do so. All right, I guess that's it for now. This episode's been absolutely great. I think that it's great to kick off the new year, and as promised, we are going to have even more interesting content for you every Friday. So please stay tuned. And please follow our accounts so that you don't miss out on any episodes. And yes, next week it would be another topic in the first season of Knowing Yourself. And please don't miss out on that as well. And yes, please drop some hearts, some likes for Bac Mark. And Bac Mark, thank you so much for your time today. And I think it's a very, very interesting topic that I think cannot be addressed fully in one episode.
No, we have scratched the surface.
Yes.
I think it's a good beginning. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us. I look forward to seeing you, so to speak, next week.
Right. Okay, Bac. Thank you, Bac.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.